Now, normally I don't make videos about gacha games and stuff like that, but I really want to talk about this one in particular. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is a game I've only played a little bit of, but I do keep up with it like in updates and like story stuff because I love Final Fantasy VII and I really like talking about Final Fantasy VII, and I never really get a chance to do so on my channel outside of like new announcements. But I really want to talk about Ever Crisis and why it kind of bugs me, right? It being a gacha game is not the problem. Like, I don't care what Square Enix does; they make gacha games all the time. Brave Exvius exists. Like the First Soldier, like the damn battle royale game that didn't do well that existed. Like, I don't give a shit what Square does, right? I honestly don't care. They can make whatever they want, and I'm probably gonna play it. It doesn't really matter what version, like what kind of game it is, right? But Ever Crisis kind of bugs me in the way they wanted to market it, right? So Ever Crisis was basically like this thing where like they was like, okay, so all the Final Fantasy games, like all the compilation of Final Fantasy VII games, you can play in this little condensed form in this mobile game, right? We're gonna have, you know, Final Fantasy VII. You can replay Final Fantasy VII if you want to, right? Sorta, right? You can play Crisis Core. Advent Children will be turned into a game. You can replay Dirge of Cerberus in this game style, stuff like that. Before Crisis, right? So I thought, okay, this is a cool idea. I mean, it would have been cooler if it wasn't a gacha game and it wasn't a free-to-play mobile game. It would have been like a console game, but okay, whatever. I'm down for this. It sounds cool idea. And then like, Ever Crisis has been out for quite a bit, right? And I started thinking about, okay, how they're doing Ever Crisis, because Ever Crisis is supposed to be obviously important to the remake trilogy, right? I'm sitting there like, okay, the remake trilogy is going to be cool. You know, we're going to have like stuff that from Ever Crisis, you know, revelations about Sephiroth, revelations about other characters that are going to be important to the remake trilogy. So I thought this ain't going to be such a bad idea, you know, and we're also getting extra shit, you know, to get in the game. Like, hell, I would love to play a playable version of Advent Children. I would love to be able to play Dirge of Cerberus, but good. But I started thinking about this more, and I started really thinking about, like, there is no way we're ever going to get to that. Because, how am I going to say it? So, we are pretty in deep in Ever Crisis. And obviously, the way they marketed this is it's supposed to be the game's supposed to be a real long play. It's going to be a while before we get to all the other stuff that I wanted to, you know, get into. Like, personally, I believe that we really shouldn't have had a playable version of Final Fantasy VII. Like, you can already play Final Fantasy VII on a bunch of other stuff, right? So I don't see why they had to, like, attach Final Fantasy VII, because they have to constantly update that and eventually get to the point where they can make it a full game so people can actually play it. And that also happens with, like, literally every other game in the collection. Why would I want to replay Crisis Core in this game if I could just go buy and play Crisis Core, right? Like, the only games that really make sense in this whole Ever Crisis thing are a playable Advent Children. You can play Dirge. You can play Before Crisis, which was a game you could not actually play because it was an old phone game. So, like, those are the only games that really make sense. At least with Final Fantasy VII, I could just go play Final Fantasy VII. And it's the OG 7, not like remakes FF7. So you can just go play 7, right? You can play Crisis Core. They even remastered / remade, quote unquote, Crisis Core to actually play, like, actually on different consoles and stuff like that. So why would you want to play Crisis Core again? It's the same game. It's just a different gameplay style, right? So, like, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they're spending all this time updating stuff like that, right? And then you have to get to the First Soldier business, which First Soldier was originally a battle royale game. It didn't do too hot, and Square Enix canned it after a while, right? Now they're readapting it into Ever Crisis, and that's practically the only reason you want to play Ever Crisis right now is for the new First Soldier content, because it's, you know, giving you stuff about Angeal's past, like, well, Angel and Sephiroth and perhaps Genesis when they were younger, right? It's, you know, elaborating more on their stories. It's sort of confusing about how they're trying to work this out, because, like, okay, Ever Crisis, the OG Ever Crisis wasn't really anything outside of, like, just a battle royale. It didn't even have any lore. So all the lore is being dumped into into Ever Crisis as its First Soldier portion, right? Which is cool. I'm cool with that. I'm actually cool with that, having, like, an excuse to do more stuff. But, like, why? Like, why would you market it like this if the main purpose of this game right now is just the Ever Crisis stuff? Like, sorry, my bad, the First Soldier stuff. Because, like, that's pretty much what the only reason you want to play Ever Crisis is for. It's the lore for the first soldier. Everything else is pointless at this point. Like, I could literally give two shits about Crisis Core and OG FF7 being adapted in this game because I can just go play those right now. If you're already interested in Final Fantasy VII, then you've already played those games. So what would be the point of playing Ever Crisis and replaying those games again in just a different gameplay style? It's just no point because you're experiencing the same goddamn story again. I thought, okay, well, okay, you can say the same thing about games like Dirge of Cerberus, but Dirge of Cerberus was released on one platform, that was the PS2, and that was the PS2, that was forever ago, right? Instead, like, we're not getting anything. It's like they're not even done with those games. We're not done with Crisis Core. We're not even close to being done with the OG FF7. And God only knows how long the first Soldier portion is going to last. So that means I don't see us ever getting to the other portions. My little theory here is that this game is going to die long before we even get those other games. Now, I get why they focus on these in particular, right? Because considering how they want the FF7 trilogy to like end, I don't know how they're gonna end it, but I assume they're gonna try to line up with the original FF7, right? That means games like Dirge of Cerberus and movies like Advent Children come after 7. So they don't have to worry about that right now. Perfectly fine. And Before Crisis is so before 7 that like there's no point in really adapting that right now. So I can understand why they didn't focus on those games and instead focus on the OG 7, Crisis Core, and the First Soldier. But I don't know, man. Like that was my main reason as to wanting to get into Ever Crisis was those later parts. I want to see like Dirge in a playable state that I can like enjoy, even though it's a mobile gacha game. I would have loved to see a playable Advent Children. I would have loved to see Before Crisis actually being available to people. But instead, now we're like, what? I don't know I can't remember how far we are in because I stopped playing Ever Crisis a while back. But I know for a fact that we're not done. I know for a fact we're not done with Crisis Core. I know we're not done with OG 7. So I don't know how long this game is going to go. I don't know how long Ever Crisis is going to go on before it gets canned. And if it gets canned, that means if it gets canned, like the prospect of Dirge of Cerberus being like, more available to people is out. Before Crisis being available to people are out. And a lot of people don't even like Dirge, right? But I want to see what they could have done with it, in this whole style of game, right? I would have loved to play with Advent Children. That was like one of the coolest things I thought that were going to be there. Like, oh shit, you could play Advent Children? That'd be super cool. Instead of watching, you could be in it. That would be kind of cool, right? But I don't know, man. I mean, this game would have to last like forever to do that. And I feel like this game, there's no way it's going to last that long. I feel like, to me personally, I feel like the last game in the remake trilogy will be done before we even get to those later parts in Ever Crisis. That's just my theory. Like, I don't see this happening. And don't even get me started about the crossovers they're doing. And I get it, they need to do crossovers to make money. They need, get people's interest in the game. But I don't think a crossover between Final Fantasy IX or Final Fantasy VI is completely necessary. Like, you guys marketed this like a easy way to play those games that those other games that people wanted to play, or play Advent Children. But I mean, I honestly don't care about like a Final Fantasy VI crossover. I like Final Fantasy VI, don't get me wrong, and I like seeing the new costumes they have for these characters. But like, this is just more time that they were putting in. There's more time and resources they're putting in these banners that they can just put in like the other parts of the game. Like I don't see, like I know this game is not going to last long. It's just not. And I think that's the sins of like a game like this. It's not meant to be what I wanted it to be. And I knew something like this was going to happen. And I was thinking, like, there's no way they're going to do all these games like that. And I hate it. I hate how this game's turning out. I'm not really a big fan of how it's acting now, but it's whatever, right? It's whatever. Ain't really shit we can do about it. The only thing I'm really looking forward to is the new First Soldier content. That's pretty much it. And I do like how they're expanding on certain characters, like, backstory quests and stuff like that. I like that. And I like they're doing like little side Christmas stuff and New Year events, but I don't know, man. It just feels like now it's every other gacha game. They could have just made a Final Fantasy VII gacha game and cut the bullshit and just say, hey, man, here's a gacha game featuring Final Fantasy VII characters. Like, I don't even mind like the little shit they're adding in, like events and stuff like that, because it's cool. But now it's not going to be something I would really want to deal with now. Yeah, that's why I don't want to play it no more. I'm just kind of watching cutscenes about like. Now I'm just kind of watching cutscenes about the First Soldier stuff. That's pretty much it. So I don't know. I think that's one thing I'm keeping up with. But outside of that, I just don't want to play the game anymore. But that's just my opinion, guys. I am sorry for like stuttering and stumbling this whole video. This is how I feel. I hope my words got across to other people because this is a little bit of a bummer. But I should have seen it coming.